Now, those restrictions were largely in place until just a couple of years ago, when the Biden administration, after the United States Supreme Court took up the Dobbs decision, granted cert on it, at that point, the Biden administration decided to eliminate 20 years of in-person dispensing requirements for this drug. They didn't cite any studies that they said were adequate. In fact, the FDA acknowledged that the studies that they looked at did not take into account the new protocols that they were issuing. They just eliminated 2 decades of in-person dispensing requirements. My question to you is, given the FDA's own findings on this drug over 2 decades, doesn't it make sense that the FDA return to the pre-political, before the political intervention of the Biden administration, the pre-political protocol that requires in-person dispensing for chemical abortion drugs?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I cover stories the mainstream won't touch, deep dives, real facts, and no fluff. Today we're talking about how the Biden administration quietly gutted pro-life safety standards, all to appease Big Pharma and the abortion lobby. Senator Josh Hawley exposed this in a Senate hearing. You need to hear what was said. For over 2 decades, starting under President Clinton, the FDA had strict safety measures for chemical abortion drugs. These rules were based on real data, real risks. In-person doctor visits, day 1 administration, day 3 return, and day 14 follow-up. The FDA said these drugs needed these measures for safety. That's science, not politics.
Senator, I appreciated our conversation prior to this hearing. I do think it makes sense to review the totality of data and ongoing data. I know personally of OB doctors who prefer to insist, even though they have the option to prescribe otherwise, but they choose to insist that mifepristone be taken when necessary in their office as they observe the person taking it. And I think their concern there is that if this drug is in the wrong hands, it could be used for coercion.
And of course, you're familiar with the fact that now it's not merely that there's no requirement that it be ingested in the presence of a physician. There's no in-person dispensing requirement whatsoever. This is what the Biden administration, 2 decades of in-person dispensing requirements, the Biden administration eliminated those. Now, you've said several times you'll review the data. You're aware that in 2016, the Obama FDA eliminated the requirement that physicians report adverse events.
Then the Supreme Court took up the Dobbs case, and the Biden administration removed nearly all protections. No more in-person requirements, no need to see a physician. These drugs can now be mailed across the country. The FDA didn't base this on new studies. They admitted the studies didn't align with the new protocols.
I believe they limited the data required to fatalities but not adverse events.
Will you put back in place the full reporting requirements so that you can have a full range of data to evaluate?
Senator, I'm happy to look at that. I do believe in data, and I don't believe in prejudging data before somebody has taken a look at data, including future data.
Well, let me just say that here's the deal. The FDA's rules were pretty consistent and pretty stable for 20-plus years until suddenly the Dobbs decision appeared on the horizon. And when that happened, all of a sudden, we got massive changes in the dispensing requirements of this drug. And I'll just point out that over 60% of abortions in the United States are now carried out with chemical drugs, with these drugs. They're not done in clinics, they're not done in hospitals. They're done with these drugs without any kind of physician supervision, without any physicians there if there's a serious adverse event.
Who loses? This isn't about access, it's about who bears the risk when government gets cozy with Big Pharma. The answer? Women and unborn children. Over 60% of U.S. abortions are now chemical, done without doctors or clinics. When complications arise, there's no physician to help. This bypasses the will of voters in pro-life states. Biden rules allow mailing these drugs anywhere, even against state laws. That's not just wrong, it's dangerous, holding them accountable. Here's where things get serious. Hawley asked a simple question. Will you reinstate full reporting on complications and adverse events? The response? We'll review the data. No commitment, no urgency. That's deflection. Smash that subscribe button right now. I need your help to grow this channel and fight back against censorship. Let's keep this movement going.
If the Biden rules are allowed to stand, it doesn't matter what voters in the states, it doesn't matter what, this is a serious and very difficult moral issue, the case of life and abortion. And it won't matter what voters in the states say, because the Biden rules say now that bureaucrats can mail in abortion drugs to every single state, no in-person dispensing required. It doesn't matter what voters in the state have decided on the issue. It doesn't matter whatsoever. Now, if that's allowed to stand, we may as well just go back to having the Supreme Court make all the decisions, because right now Washington bureaucrats are making all the decisions. Doctors are not involved. They're not in-person dispensing. State voters are not involved. And I just want to register, this is extremely concerning to me. It ought to be concerning to everyone who's concerned about women's safety, and also about what I thought was the position of this administration, which is that it ought to be voters in the states and the relevant to localities that are deciding this decision. So I know you're familiar with this, Doctor.
Conclusion. Look, we're at a crossroads. The Biden administration made a political decision that strips away common sense safety measures that protected women and the unborn for over 20 years. Why? For votes, for profits, for power? Senator Hawley said it best: if these rules stand, then state laws, doctors, and even voters no longer matter. Washington bureaucrats will decide everything. That's not democracy, that's control. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the FDA caved to politics? And what do you think needs to happen next? Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and never stop speaking the truth. Peace.